Thank you for that long introduction. But more importantly, thank you everyone for being here. This is a special occasion, so I hear. This isn't something that happens on a regular in this space. Is that true? Okay, well good. Well, we're making history tonight, so I'm excited about this. I learn just as much as everyone that comes when we're on a panel setting such as this, so I'm eager to take my seat so that I can be invigorated and educated. So I'll just do my part here, and that is to show what it is that I know about hip-hop. Hip-hop is made to inspire. It's cool, it's hot, it's cold, and sometimes ice cold. It's the city, it's the streets, and now it is the birds. It's worldwide, it's universal. In fact, it's so universal, if you were to sign a recording contract today, it would say, "We own you throughout the universe." Some say hip-hop is black. I say hip-hop is to the black, to the white, the purple, and yellow. But first we got bang, bang, boogie to the boogie. Say up, jump, boogie to the bang, bang, boogie. Rock the rhythm that makes your body rock. Speaking of white, I'm asked all the time about Iggy. Let's see how you elephant in the room, huh? I tell you what, I toured in 1987. My first tour ever was in Denmark, Copenhagen, and the entire audience looked like Iggy. So I know that there is a love for this music that goes beyond any color, any creed, any religion, any culture. It is colorless. And so I believe that hip-hop can be grasped and embraced by all. In fact, it's not just Iggy, it's Sweet Tea, it's Sparky D, it's Nefertiti, it's Queen Latifah, it's Moni Love, it's Lynn Q, it's Imani Mayday, it's Kim, Foxy, and Nicki. Hip-hop is everyone. It's all of us, and so much more. Hip-hop is old school, is new school, is no school rules, except for the true school. Those who have something to say outside of assassinating the character of our young brothers and our young sisters. Hip-hop is fresh fest. What y'all know about that? Hip-hop is tougher than leather. It's Crush Groove, it's Run DMC, it's LL Cool J, it's Kool Herc, Africa Bambaataa, Grandmaster Flash, and the Furious Five. It's Kaz, it's Guru, it's Primo, it's KRS-One, it's Digital Underground, it's Arrested Development. I am everyday people. I am everyday people. It's Sha Rock, the first female MC I ever heard rock the mic. It's Roxanne Shante, the real Roxanne, Roxanne's cousin and her aunties and the entire Roxanne family. Hip-hop is fly, it's dope, it's deaf, it's stupid. Makes you get crunk, makes you holler, make you scream. You got jumped. You even got slammed because you were fronting and didn't want to fess up that you were hated. This is the slang of hip-hop. My homie, my knucker. She is a dime. He is so fine. That chick, that done. He be running from the po-po one time. Whoop, whoop. That's the sound. But shizzle my lizzle, there's skeezers, there's chicken heads. I may even call you my son, and you may even call me your mom, but we ain't related at all. It's New York, it's Cali, it's ATL, St. Louis with Nelly, it's Texas with Bun B, it's Detroit, it's Chi-Town with Common, Kanye, Lupe, and President Obama. Yes, President Obama is hip-hop. It's Virginia rapping with Timberland and Missy and Pharrell. It's Miami, it's Oakland and North Kakalaka. We're everywhere, Berlin, UK, Argentina, Turkey, Dubai, and if you hadn't heard, niggas are in Paris. We are international. Hip-hop has become the vehicle by which many of us, men, women, boys, girls, have escaped the the confines of a less desirable state of being. The disenfranchised, the outcast, the less than fortunate, the left destitute and bound to create from our vivid imaginations. Hip-hop was born out of poverty, a community of people struggling to define their own identities or just straight struggling to survive. We found words, that using our words could unleash the hurt that was bestowed upon us, the wrong that had been done to us. We could, we would, and we did speak out. We used our voices to warn of the terror of drugs that infiltrated our blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks, and soon our entire neighborhoods were overthrown by drug lords and crackheads. An unheard bomb had crashed, and we were all feeling the after effects. Post-traumatic stress led to MC seizing the attention of the community by painting a vivid picture of the turmoil that took up space on every corner of our neighborhoods. Hip-hop then, well, there were a variety of themes and storylines. Not all looked to depict the happening in the streets of the ghetto. Some chose to entertain in hopes of helping others escape the harsh realities of hunger and hood life. Unfortunately, the majority of today's helmed hip-hop does not truly reflect holistically what our youth is faced with. No one impedes or attacks the degradation of the most precious entity to walk this earth, woman.
Yes.
The force that gives life, that nurtures and teaches. All stand by while she receives a verbal whipping and agrees to get down on the floor because she has to experience the love where there is none. She has to look forward to the adoration from a true king that has not appeared just yet. The images created by a few influence nations to think of us as less than the beautiful and amazing queens we are and will be. Amazingly enough, women aren't the only ones under attack. Men, you are the subject of annihilation as well. A constant reminder of who you're not, what you don't have, how you can't be fulfilling in a relationship because once you're at the club and he comes to the club, he's taking your girl with him. Those rappers lay into men pretty thick and their hate and insults propped up on their super large egos. Hip-hop, has it changed? Absolutely. Was it inevitable? No doubt. It blossomed. It had to grow. The commercialism that surrounds hip-hop can only serve as a negative so long as we allow it to. Others can be fooled, but we can never stand in silence about what is necessary to keep hip-hop alive. The objectification of women has always been alive in the United States. Hip-hop is nothing new. Women parade through boxing matches and bathing suits, entertaining, holding cards that tell us the number of the match that we're about to see. We see cheerleaders take the field in hopes of entertaining while players set up for their next play. Hip-hop, unfortunately, is no different when it comes to dollars and cents. It's a business for them, but will always be so much more for us. We're in desperate need of balance and understanding. We must understand that although we are made to think hip-hop is no longer in our control, oh, but it is. Continue to speak out about your female MCs that push the envelope for change. A woman's narrative is so much needed. It's so very important to create and maintain balance within the hip-hop, that female voice. We need to salute women who are just and righteous, just as we should the men who are doing right by their brothers and their sisters. If we commit ourselves to uplifting the MC that chooses to rhyme while awake, I call it RWA, rhyming while awake, conscious of his or her surroundings and willing to speak about his ups and his downs, willing to share how he or she stays focused on the dream of being better, the dream of being wiser, and not just for themselves, but for their families, their communities, and so on. The dream of traveling across country and spreading a message that's worthwhile. If we could just get back to what is real, what makes you feel just a little bit concerned, just a little bit connected, because really we all are one. If we could just get back to cohesive thoughts in a verse, a train of thought we could actually follow, a storyline, a theme outside of their cars, their jewelry, their guns, and their women. My love from the beginning has been to inspire, not just with song, but with action. I've written books about it. I will continue to do so. They ask me, how have I become such a mainstay? How is it that I'm still relevant in this time, in this day, so long from the time when I first started? And I liken myself to water. Water cannot be stopped. It will get over, it will get through, around, under, it will permeate. I cannot be told no. I will push, I will push. I define myself as being unstoppable, but all of us here are unstoppable. In my quest for being the best, and that's not just as an MC, the best person I can be, I found that giving back is always the road that gives. And so in that, we started an organization called Hip Hop Sisters. Thus far, we've given away 4 $100,000 scholarships to young girls furthering their education. That's a big thing, you should clap. I'm okay to tell you what to do, you just have to do it. I have someone here that likes to tell me what to do. I don't often listen, but I should. Lynn Richardson is the president of Hip Hop Sisters. She came to me many years ago and said, do you want to start a foundation? I said, are you kidding? Absolutely I do. And 4 or 5 months later, we had a 501c3 status for Hip Hop Sisters, and we've been changing lives not only in this country but abroad as well. We started a new initiative, and I'd love for you, Lynn Richardson, to come up and tell them about this new initiative before we get started with the panel.
Okay, so you're going to say what it is? Or?
No, I want you to say it all.
Okay.
Hashtag educate our men. That'll give you
history lesson. Wasn't she awesome? I'm Lynn Richardson. I'm the president of Hip Hop Sisters Foundation. I have a background in finance. I run one of Russell Simmons foundations, and like said, I reached out to her about 3 or 4 years ago now and wanted to do something very different. And I saw this organization on Twitter called Hip Hop Sisters. Now, I am a wife. I've been married for 20 years to a man whom I love. I have 3 daughters. In fact, my oldest, who's a sophomore at Northwestern, we were chatting on the phone today and realized she's here. And so am I, in the same hotel. Craziness. Yeah, it's like, how do you not know your own child is here? Your mom is here in the same city, the same hotel, sleeping. So I've got all these things. I've been a vice president at JP Morgan Chase, but when I saw Hip Hop Sisters, I said, before I was a president of anything, before I was a wife, before I was a mother, before I was any of this, I was hip hop. My first record was Rapper's Delight. I can still sing all the words to Light as a Rock if you let me do it right now, but I will not do that today. And so I believe from day one that not only was hip hop important and infused in our culture, but we, when I say we, I'm talking about me. I'm talking about the doctors and the lawyers and the company presidents and my sorority sisters of Delta Sigma Theta who are teachers and all these things. We've grown up, and now but we are still hip hop. So Educate Our Men is one of our initiatives. It's all about helping our men understand that we are valuable, we are strong, we are responsible, we are dedicated. We've given away 3 $50,000 scholarships, and as it relates to hip hop and capitalism, one of the things that is really important to me, our other initiative, which is all about women, wealth, and relationships, but it's really about family and money. And you said something earlier, like you said, you know, hip hop is business to others, but it's so much more to us. And what I would say to you is everything is business. I'm in a marriage. Let me tell you, it is business. I've going to seminary, at church. It is a business. And so everything that we do, whether you are doctors or lawyers or artists or whatever it is, there's a business element to it. And as it relates to what we've been able to do in our community for the business, everyone has made money off of hip hop in a big way, except in many cases, communities of color. So we're just really excited about Hip Hop Sisters Foundation, excited about being here today, and excited even more about this conversation around capitalism. Thank you.
Every now and then, I'll share a panel with somebody that I am in awe of, right? Because you know where this is going. This is like, foreshadowing here. But sometimes there'll be scholars, right? So sometimes there's someone whose book I read and really shaped the way I think about a particular subject, how I see the world. And or on occasion, they'll actually be an MC. I'm a fan as well as a scholar of hip hop. And I wish I could, spit some rhymes, some hot bars, be like my man Kevin Hart, and I can't even do that. I can't even get to Kevin Hart's level. But when I was in, from the time, so I'm a little older than MC Light, but I still heard MC Light when I was growing up. I was in college, and we mentioned Morehouse, but this is kind of sad. There was a party. Well, there's something back in the day known as Freaknik. We mentioned this last night, and Freaknik, there's an article just came out on the history of Freaknik in Atlanta, which was it was tied clearly to hip hop generation in a very, very special way. And the last classic Freaknik documented in the history was a big giant party, college students coming in from all over. And the last one, that was one really with college students, people from the Atlanta University Center, Howard, Hampton, FAM, Tuskegee people come down, people from Emory, Georgia State. And then it started to kind of expand. But the last classic Freaknik was 1989, when it was just still kind of in a neighborhood park, and a fight broke out. And this fight broke out when my best friend jumped this dude who slapped this woman who was a Spelman, and there was all this kind of drama. And the park, which had been it never happened before, and as the fight went on, the band stopped playing. We had a go-go band from DC. It stopped playing, and the crowd started chanting, "Self-destruction." He headed to self-destruction. They all don't even know that song, but the song was it was an iconic song of that period, and hip hop actually spoke the language of, ending violence in our communities. And at this point, when this fight broke out, hundreds of people in unison, joined together around this song that had been one of the hottest songs in the country, and it was a hip hop song. The center of it, MC Light was one of the many people in that song, and they talked about, again, self-destruction. So you have been kind of in the sonic background to my life for many, many years. So it's really kind of cool that and I think about that video, I think about that song, and why you say shoe lay and all that kind of stuff. I remember your verse. Yeah, so. Drink my water. Okay, I want to thank also the NAACP faculty, Cecile and Dr. Rosalind. Thank you so much. The generosity, hospitality, Department of Communication Studies. You guys have been absolutely amazing, great food, great conversation. The students, you guys have all been wonderful, so thanks a lot for that. The last thing I want to say is that I'm in Connecticut, and right now it's, I don't know, it was about maybe 30 degrees when I left, and it was super duper cold. Came down here. I feel like I'm in paradise. It's amazing. I got you down. I know y'all don't believe me, but I ran and I came back with a tan. Some of y'all guys know I ran, and so I came back. I even got a tan down here, so thank you so much for that. That alone, again, and seeing MC Light and all that has just been made this a wonderful trip. So thank you for everything. I want to kind of look at, in this talk, I really want to explore the role that capitalism has played in the development of hip hop, but I really want to look at the musical antecedents, so looking at genres of music before hip hop to provide some context for how we understand its role in hip hop in this particular moment. So as was said in the introduction, I'm a historian, and my first book is on Black Power, and I look at how organizations in the late 1960s saw the empowerment of black people. So people have been systematically disempowered, moved outside the political, economic, social realms of power for hundreds of years. Many people there were different impulses in the Black freedom movement. On one impulse, you have people who want to integrate into the fabric of the United States. And they explicitly said, in the case of Dr. King, that integration was a promised land for the Negro, right? And they thought, and these are people like the NAACP, right? Roy Wilkins, who was the head of the NAACP, Whitney Young was the head of the Urban League. They said that they envisioned an America after the Civil Rights Movement where African Americans were as inextricably as tied to the fabric of America as the Jew, as the Pole, as the Irishman. And they used those sorts of words. They thought that it would be this sort of melting pot of sorts. And then you had other people who had become disenchanted with the idea of integration, and in fact argued that what was necessary was for black people to build institutions, economically, politically, socially, educationally, religiously, that it was important for people to empower themselves in a cultural way and to affirm themselves in an important way. So they said that going into a church, for example, that people could remain Christians. So some people left Christianity for Islam or an African religion. But people say if you go into a church and look at a picture of a Jesus that looked like a Viking, right? And looked like sort of Nordic, Scandinavian, Irish dude, right? That it was something that was disempowering spiritually for black people. So they talked about having Jesuses that were dark skinned and with woolly hair. And then there are other people who talked about schools, creating independent black schools, like William C. Shule, was there in Brooklyn? And in Brooklyn, so across the country, people do that. But also people talk about business. And this is really kind of important part here, is that when we look at African American, the commodification of African American culture, there were a couple spaces where African Americans could, in fact, could demonstrate their humanity with a script that was not written by others. And those two spaces were sports, and because say if you look at, we're talking about the maybe mid 20th century, so let's say the post-war period or after World War II. So the majority of African Americans still, black people were not allowed in professional sports. So we all know about Jackie Robinson, when Jackie Robinson comes in 1947 in Brooklyn Dodgers. But the vast majority of people, whenever they saw a black person anywhere in popular media, in movies, the most famous black person in the United States was a guy in 1930s named Stephen Fetching. And he played this sort of buffoonish character, Lincoln Perry. So he played this sort of buffoon who was a clown, he was servile. And then the images of black women as mammies and servants. And so people never saw, and there were children's books and everything where black people were ridiculed, their humanity. There were sayings, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a nigger by his toe, that people told their little kids. And so it's a very sort of hostile space, even in black newspapers. So the Baltimore Afro-American in the 1920s, the biggest source of revenue, or about 20% of its revenue, came from skin whitening ads, right? So this is a black-owned newspaper sending advertisements to the black community, encouraging them through skin whitening ads, and they would have sayings. There's a saying, an old African-American saying before the Black Power movement: if you're white, someone like George Bush, if you're white, you're all right. If you're yellow, this is a light-skinned black person, you're mellow. If you're brown, so I'm brown skinned, stick around. If you're black, and that's someone maybe like Michael Jordan's color, get back, right? And this idea that even the African American community, people had sort of internalized these things. And so black civil rights movement never addressed that. Civil rights movement never talked about black is beautiful and so on. So Black Power did. And Black Power talked about the empowerment and around business. The other area where black people might have their own script, and this is when it comes to music. Duke Ellington was celebrated as the most famous musician at a certain point, composer, period, in the United States. Big band, jazz leader. He was debonair, sophisticated, very, very talented. And he had to, because of his business deals, he and Louis Armstrong had to have white people sign to owning the masters to their not just owning the masters to their songs, but also they had co-writing credits even when they didn't co-write songs. And the idea was, Louis Armstrong said famously that in a white man's world, it's good to have a white man on your side to make sure you get that dollar from that other white man, right? And so this idea that they were turning away literally millions of dollars to other people because institutionalized racism was that virulent. And there are all these other stories that we all know about rock and roll artists, Little Richard. And Prince will talk about Little Richard. Other people talk about Little Richard, about how here he is, one of the founders, one of the first rock and roll, one of three first rock and roll superstars, right? And when people would get signed to labels, they'll say, "Hey boy, come here." And they come and say, "I love the way you play that music. I love the way you play the piano, the guitar. I love the way you sing. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make you rich and famous." Like, really? Yeah. And you take someone, like they said in the video, these really, really young people. I'm gonna give you a Cadillac, a fur coat, some new shoes, and guess what? $300. Like, what? $300? $300 right here, man. Look at that. 1, 2, 3. You pay, son, and people were signing off forever. Got no money ever. And the only money they got was a generous offer. They felt, I'll give you extra money so you don't make a fuss, right? And so there were these people who were hyper exploited. So now, when we get to the Black Power movement, there were some folks. In the early 1960s, there was a guy named Sam Cooke. And Sam Cooke, how many people, show of hands, know Sam Cooke, have heard the name, right? Oh, good. You guys should applaud yourselves now. I'm really impressed. So that's good. A lot of my students don't know Sam Cooke. So Sam Cooke, he was like considered the father of soul. And one of the things that Sam Cooke did, Sam Cooke, and a lot of people don't know this, but Sam Cooke, he had come from Chicago. He was the first major R&B guy to come out, and he didn't have a conch in his hair. Like all these guys, you name them. Little Richard, Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, the Isley Brothers, when they first came out, all these guys had perms and conchs in their hair. This guy came out and let his hair be natural, right? He didn't think that God made a mistake when he made black people's hair, so he let his hair be natural. And he was a smooth, debonair guy. He was really sophisticated. Everyone liked him. He was handsome. All these things going for him. People were drawn to him. And he believed in the empowerment of artists. And he talked about how artists actually need to have more control over their work. They're making millions, but often getting hundreds of dollars. And this is 1960. They're literally getting hundreds of thousands. They're making millions. And so he thought that it was important, along the lines of James Brown, to create labels, have more control of their art, and actually make more money, cutting out middlemen and that kind of thing. And he actually hung around black nationalists and the Nation of Islam. So he was a confidant of Muhammad Ali. There's a video on YouTube that you can see Muhammad Ali and Sam Cooke sing. Muhammad Ali became heavyweight champion of the world. There were two other people in the audience with him. There were two friends. One was Sam Cooke, and the other was Malcolm X. And so Sam Cooke hung around these folks, and black nationalists argued always that black people need to create black institutions, including black businesses. So when we get to music, in the 1960s, in the 1960s, with the Black Power movement that goes on, and this is kind of an interesting story right here, just real fast. If you look at us, Tupac, just a little connection there between black nationalists and the Nation of Islam, and then Malcolm breaks from the nation to become a so-called Orthodox Muslim, a Sunni Muslim. And this is sort of a bridge of sorts, I argue, between the Black Power movement and hip hop. Tupac is, quite literally that bridge in many respects. Of course, Mother's in the Panther Party, and he inherits a lot of that. One of the things I want to look at in terms of capitalism and exploitation, but also empowerment, is how we can look at theories from, but this is going to be very academic, so I'm going to skip over this. Following history, I can't do it. I don't feel like nerdy and stuff. We talk about Gramsci in that way. So, but when we talk about hegemony and we think about Stuart Hall and reception theory and encoding, it becomes important for how we think about the role of capitalism, because hip hop has always been about making money, and it's always been about business. As you said, Ms. Richardson said, you've always had business as front and center in hip hop. It's been part of the artist and the narrative of hip hop as well. But we also have resistive narratives to exploitative demonstrations of that. And when we think about hegemony, and hegemony is right here. We have one theorist refers to another. Antonio Gramsci was an Italian political theorist. He was imprisoned by Mussolini in the 1920s. And Gramsci says this. Gramsci writes, this is the guy talking about Gramsci, normally uses the word hegemony to mean the ways in which a governing power wins consent to rule from those it subjugates. So people who actually are in positions of power can manipulate the oppressed in many ways to consent, right? To capitulate, to their own oppression. And so how do you do that? Culture becomes really important to that, right? And how we imagine culture being a tool. So in the during the fascist periods, there are notions where the government might use what we call the fourth estate, the media. It can use entertainment, a lot of different forces to propagate certain images and certain ideas. And there's a guy named Stuart Hall who talks about culture this way. And he writes that for him, for culture, for Stuart Hall, was not something to simply appreciate or study, but, quote, a critical site of social action and intervention, where power relations are both established and potentially unsettled, right? So it's just a sort of power relation that can become established or unsettled. So let's kind of look at how this happens with black music and the rise of hip-hop. And the last thing right here is reception theory, encoding and decoding. I'm not going to really talk too much about that. Controlling images, I'll look at Patricia Hill Collins and Black Feminist Thought and apply this to, you can apply it not just black women, but other people as well. And then another theorist about culture, this becomes important, is Theodore Adorno, who's a leftist, someone who's very critical of capitalism, but also looked at culture. And he was a musician as well. He said that he saw culture industry as an arena in which critical tendencies or potentialities were eliminated. So he argued that if you have something that's subversive, right, if you have something that comes up from the people that has potential for radicalism, the state, those people in positions of power, can take whatever sort of radical impulses, co-opt them, sanitize them, and sell it back to the people as a sort of an impotent, vapid expression, right? So you can have something that one way comes out, and they're like, yo, these dudes are hard, militant. Like we played a video earlier of Queen Latifah, Ladies First, and this is one of the biggest songs of her career, that and UNITY. And you can have a certain impulse, fight the power, a series of things, and then at a certain point, expressions are sort of modified, repressed, and changed in all kinds of different ways. When we look at the early 1970s, there's something that pops up with when we go through the Bronx and some of these things, just to jump forward in our narrative. I want to look at the role right here in the 1970s. We all know Clyde Davis, right? Music executive, and he was a young man working at Columbia Records, and early on in 1972, or maybe 71, he commissioned a study from Harvard Business School, a study called Study of the Soul Music Environment Prepared for Columbia Records Group. This was made to Clyde Davis in May of 1972. And what this did was, it was an analysis of all these independent black labels that existed across the United States at this time. And there was a certain potential that this study demonstrated existed with these labels. And with the potential, we have a number of labels, if I get my notes right. A number of these labels were black owned and operated, and they were purchased. One was Stax Records, an independent black label. Up to this point, a lot of white labels did not have what they call race music. They would not pay much attention to it. Motown emerged as this juggernaut, right? Motown was so big, it made so much money. It was the largest black-owned business in the United States of America. They were making all this money, right? Berry Gordy's here in Detroit making all this money, and people looked at Berry Gordy, people looked at Stax, people looked at Philadelphia International and said, we need to get into this market. It's kind of like in the case of the numbers racket in Harlem in the 1930s when Beanie Siegel and these characters said, we want to get in that market because black folks are making so much money here. I can't see how we can't let that happen, how we can let that actually happen. So it was the same sort of gangster mentality coming in and eliminating these people in the autonomy that was controlled. So right here we have Chess Records, black owned, Kent, Atlantic Records. They were gobbled up by what we call the majors, RCA, Columbia, and Capitol. And the only one left was Motown. And so when we get into the 1970s, Motown into the 1980s remained black-owned, independent, and the largest black business in the United States, and Motown that was purchased by these folks. So Motown actually went. So there are no black-owned businesses at all, and there were big labels, or not, they were quite big. Enter hip-hop, right? And when I look at the very first popular rap song, look at rappers alike. At the very beginning, you have people talk about conspicuous consumption. Wow. And so you have everything about, but you look at the world in which hip hop emerged, right? We look at the Bronx, we saw the pictures of the Bronx, we saw all these things. And this is, and I hope that this is authentic. I got this from online, and this actually comes up in the book as well. It looks, because when you get, I'm a historian, of course, and when you look at things like this, it's very convenient, because at the time, very few artifacts exist from all these parties people used to throw. But 1520 Cedric is a very famous address. Anyone who's a big hip hop head knows that Kool Herc lived there. They had parties. Kool Herc first hip hop DJ. But here is the story. The legend is that Kool Herc's little sister was saying, "Hey, we're going back to school. It would be really cool to have a party. You can DJ, get the turntable, get the big sound system out." In this rec room, charge the ladies 25 cents, charge the fellas 50 cents, and make a grip, and see how that happens, right? So, exactly. It's all relative, right? So they're making a grip out of that 25-cent charge. And so we see here this early back to school jam. But the point is that they were about actually monetizing their culture early on. So it was about to go back to Mr. Richardson taught. Business had been front and center from the earliest days of hip hop. So the idea of monetizing it wasn't something that came out later, but also what was interesting about hip hop is that a lot of people didn't initially understand the potential of hip hop, didn't think that hip hop had the force, the appeal to penetrate into the mainstream, that it would be this multi-billion-dollar industry later on. And a lot of times when people had their tapes, they went to labels, tried to get signed, they found resistance, they found disinterest, and very little possibilities for money in the thing. But what we do find is that DJs early on were able to perform at clubs. There were certain clubs that ended up becoming hotspots, and they would have clubs that would get sold out. And this before any album had been made, before any EP had been made. And some of these spots grew up emerged in Brooklyn, and actually in the Bronx and in Manhattan. MCs, DJ Hollywood, a series of other people would come out. They would be invited to MC a party. They would get paid. And then B-boys really weren't monetizing their art form initially, but there were ways that people found that too. And this comes up in a lot of movies, early movies, clubs, and concerts. So when hip-hop starts to become institutionalized by the early 1980s, there were a few movies that come out. And I'm gonna give you guys 3 movies, and we'll kind of wrap this up. But there are 3 hip-hop movies that I sort of see as a trilogy of sorts. And I believe you may be in one of those movies. I don't know, we'll see. And I think, but the first one is...
That was too soon.
It was too soon. The early ones,
Yeah,
the 2 early ones, but there's one in 2002.
I was too young.
You were too young, I know. So there was one in 1982 called Wild Style. And Wild Style actually centers, all 4 elements are represented, but it centers on graffiti artists. But all 3 movies, there's a trope there, there's a sort of recurring theme, where the artists themselves are dealing with the monetization of their art. And there's some artists who are like, I do this art because I love it, and I get pleasure from it. I enjoy it for its aesthetics. I enjoy seeing people appreciate my art. And he was a writer. He used to do graffiti on the walls. And I used to be a tagger, and I didn't do any big pieces and stuff. But I remember not telling people my name was Speed. I'm not telling people who I was, and it was exciting to see people see my tag. Right? There was something about just knowing that people saw my stuff up, right? And just sometimes you walk around and you'll come across a wall and you even remember hitting it. And there was something gratifying about seeing your stuff everywhere. And there was no money involved in this process, but there's still something gratifying. But again, if you're a teenager, you're gonna pay rent, it's a different ballgame, right? And but the idea in this movie is that the main character didn't want to make money off of this by going on a gallery and selling yourself to a gallery on campus downtown. That was a big point of the movie. If you jump up to a movie, the second of this is Crush Groove, 1985. And Crush Groove, also of all 4 elements represented, but looks at as a sort of kind of loose biography of Def Jam. And in that you have people who are also looking at how hip hop becomes a business. And Def Jam grows, or Crush Grooves grows so large they can't in fact satisfy all the demands for these albums. Like they're coming out of a college dorm room and all that, but also these questions of authenticity and direction. And the third movie is Brown Sugar. And Brown Sugar,
Not Beach Street?
not Beach Beach Street existed, but I'm gonna jump up to 02 and Brown Sugar. And Brown Sugar is a more modern movie. Tay Diggs is in it, and Sam Lathan in them, and Queen Latifah is actually in the movie as well. But in this movie right here, which is a more modern take on hip hop, it looks at the same sense of hip hop's direction, one to maximize profit, which is all about capitalism, but also about aesthetics and direction. And we find this constant theme throughout, even as hip hop has become much more commercial. And one of the things I want to say is that when we look at how hip hop has had different permutations of radical expressions, counter-hegemonic expressions, critiques again on music and conspicuous consumption, we have also this process of co-option and appropriation. And one of the most conspicuous examples of appropriation of radical discourse has been this image right here of Malcolm X, which is a very, very famous one on the left, with an assault rifle, his house has been firebombed by terrorists. He wants to make sure his family was safe, and he looks out, and the picture allegedly was taken by Alex Haley when he was interviewing him. But that photo has been used by so many people. But you have people who aren't in fact engaged in the liberation of black people, or they make reference to it not in the context of the liberation that Malcolm X offered, but about all sorts of other things. So it might be about, I'm selling drugs to black people. I love selling crack, and selling crack is fun. And in fact, I'm gonna use Malcolm X right here. We have young Gigi right here who's like, I'm gonna go into the trap. I'm gonna go where they sell crack, right? And I'm gonna trap or die by any means necessary. like actually appropriating an image that in fact is anathema to the message of selling crack and killing black people, right? But it's fascinating to see, but he's making, of course, a large sum of money, capitalist impulse, there's a demand, there's a market for it, and you certainly have these appropriations symbols right there. We have actually rappers who might see themselves as ideological heirs of Malcolm, not in the way that Young Jeezy does, but right here we have Yasin Bey, better known as Mos Def, and La Casual right here. And then over here we have, of course, KRS-One. If we jump up right now to hip hop, and one of the last things is that it's always been about money. I wrote some things down, and these are kind of interesting about records, about industries and music and what hip hop did. So when black music, when independent labels were being purchased by all these people, there were folks across the country who had never graduated from college, who had never gone to Wharton or Harvard Business School, or Kellogg, and they had never had any formal education, but were able to do business deals that were unprecedented. Right? They did things that, and Damon Dash actually said Rockefeller Records, when they went in to make deals with Rockefeller Records, they got quote unquote, excuse the word, they got nigga deals, he said. They came to him assuming that these three black men who were all in their 20s, they were too ignorant, didn't have the business savvy, didn't have the mental acuity to understand the dynamics of business negotiations, and that they would take these little deals. And in fact, instead, they went back and said, we'll do our own thing, make more money, and have more control, and actually enter distribution deals that people had not done before, following models made by No Limit Records and some others. And so we have in the 1980s, all of a sudden, the proliferation of all these labels that, unlike rock and roll, unlike jazz, unlike blues, unlike gospel, and although all people from those generations would denounce rock and hip hop as sort of crude and ignorant and obstreperous, and they would be sort of an embarrassment, it was the hip hop generationers had business acumen that no other generation of black musicians, black, white, Asian, Latino, had ever done in the United States. Period, right? And it's something that is often overlooked. There's a particular genius of hip hop, not just in head spins and other things, and doing some wonderful art on the wall and lyrical wordplay, but also the business acumen has often been overlooked. And this is the thing that's quite fascinating. Not that all these labels I'm about to mention are still up and running and hope have no problems. We think about someone saying Jermaine Dupri, who's got bankruptcy issues, and someone said, well, I guess money was a problem, right, for him. And so people, when we look at some of these things here, y'all might be too young for that, but here we go. Skywalker Records, right? We talk about Miami and Luther Campbell, or he had the name at one point, Luke Skywalker. We have Rap-A-Lot out of Houston, your people right here in Texas, right? And Jay Prince. We also have in Los Angeles, in my hometown, we have Ruthless Records, which gave way, is a sort of genealogy. Ruthless Records eventually gave way to a number of companies, including Ice Cube's Lynch Mob, Dr. Dre's Death Row, which gave birth to Eminem's Aftermath, which gave birth, actually Dr. Dre's Aftermath, and then gave birth to Eminem's Shady, which gave birth to G-Unit. We have a long tradition right there. We have, of course, Cash Money, we have Rockefeller, we have Def Jam, So Def, Good Music. We have a series of labels that have come up that have generated large sums of money to the point that right now, perhaps the single richest person in music who's gone on to do other things, has handled a lot of different industries, is Diddy, right? And then we have Dr. Dre, who's made so much money that after the Apple deal goes by, he might be worth 800 on his way up towards $1 billion. They say it won't be $1 billion actually, although a lot of people say that. But hey, 800,000, $1 billion, you know what I'm saying? I can't be mad. And so we talk about hip hop, but none of these people, not one, ever graduated college, right? And most of them made their millions in their 20s. And all of them, except for Rap-A-Lot, all of them, in fact, were rappers themselves, right? And you don't find that again with any single genre of music. When Louis Armstrong and other people had to give away half their money to white folks who had nothing to do with their money, there's a certain empowerment here that came out of a tradition that the origins of hip-hop was about empowering people who have been disempowered to smack them. So when we think about hip-hop, there are some critical ways that we understand the successes, appropriation, but it doesn't mean we can ignore industry rule 4080, as some of y'all might know, right? And so one of the biggest groups in the world was Tribe Called Quest in the early 1990s. And the story was, and if you can correct me because I'm sure you know the story very well, the story was that the three main rappers, after they had been on a world tour, a mic in their hand, they'd done all these things, they came back and Q-Tip, so the most well-known of the three, said that he was sleeping on his parents' sofa. And they were like, how can you do that? You made millions. And he went through this whole thing that you pay taxes, you're your manager, you do this, you do that, video shoots, you recoup, everything else. And we came back with about $90,000. And when you think about the hyper-exploitation that a lot of people had, you can see how groups like TLC or like Tribe or like a series of others were again dealing with this. And so Tribe Called Quest had a song where they said, remember record industry rule 4000, well, remember industry rule 4080, record companies are shady, and that was this sort of marker for the dangers of the hyper-exploitative nature. And as some of you might know right now, even when we look at Cash Money, we have Lil Wayne, as I recall, trying to sue Baby, his daddy, because he was being exploited. And so it's not all fun and games, but at the same token, we have immense levels of wealth, and that has come from the creativity of hip hop artists. And one of the things I find as a hip hop generationer is the success. I really do appreciate much of the success. There are, of course, contradictions. We find contradictions in everything, in academia. That's your boy Baby right there, just money. And so, and of course, but also we have some interesting ideas, these connections to Black Power, right? So I'm gonna end on this. When we think about Black Power, when we think about the Black Power movement, with the idea of empowering people, then again, politically, economically, socially marginalized, people are not unaware of their traditions. They're not unaware of their own social political context. And just because Diddy might not say this, I can't say that Diddy's not somehow aware of what he represents as a businessman who's Black, who's from New York, who did graduate from college, but has done more than any white guy who graduated from Wharton or HBS in the realm of music. So we have right here, we of course good music right here with your boy Kanye. We have John Legend and Common, but this right here on the left is the famous, this iconic photo, 1968 Olympics, Mexico City. John Carlos and Tommy Smith right there with the bronze and gold. Go back real fast. I want to show you the quick one right here. Is your boy Diddy, right? The super rich dude who has done so much in so many areas here in New York City at the bastion of capitalist enterprise on the planet. There's no place in the world where capitalism is more celebrated, and of course a locus for so much. Right there at Times Square, he's so bold to go there with that shirt and a Black Power fist, raised up in the tradition of Tommy Smith and John Carlos. We cannot imagine, of course, a world. I couldn't imagine a world when in 1989, when people talk about fight the power. I never imagine. I can't even say it. But I could never imagine this world here. It might not seem that aberrant to you, but again, this notion that a hip hop artist could rise to this level of wealth and prestige, but it doesn't always mean again that he's not engaged in some of the exploitative endeavors that other folks have been. Hip hop continues to be diverse. It continues to be contested space. There are all sorts of ways in which people are full of contradictions. We clearly look at what people would consider a coonery that goes on with hip hop, even at the expense of Black people's dignity, even if they make money. And of course, this is an 1870s idea of a minstrel show, blackface, and we have people celebrating the destruction and death of Black people being cheered on. More recently, we have people who celebrate the drug trade very, very explicitly, right? And there are a series of people. Yeah, right. This is before my man had the tat on the ice cream on his face, so you still look rough. I want to kind of look right here. These are a couple of quotes. This is J. Cole, this is Fire Squad, and some of the lyrics. But it talks about some things that we're not going to talk about too much right here. But when you think about, again, hip hop indirections, T.I., Capitalism, Impulse, Iggy came up earlier. There's a lot to be said about demands for certain artists in hip hop and why certain artists with certain messages are marginalized. And when you think about the song right here, and even the video, it's about stripped down lyrically, celebrating again, death and destruction, the drug trade. I mean, hip hop is a very different animal than it was aesthetically 20 some odd years ago. But the impulse for capitalist excess, for wealth, for money has always been there. I can go through a whole list. One of the things that I appreciated when MC Light gave a list of some songs, some names, I actually wrote down a whole bunch of terms that people have used over the years for money. And if I could remember some of the things on the top of my head, but let's see. So even some of the songs. When we had the DJ, whoever the DJ was, shout out to the DJ. I enjoyed a lot of those songs, but we had Paid in Full with Rakim, right? But we all know, of course, we know about cream, guac, cheddar, snaps, paper, cabbage, cheese. We talk about their presidents. We talk about a whole bunch of different things that people have said over the years about hip hop. And we end right here with this guy. he still has been doing the same sort of thing that people have said before, but it's at sort of expense of the humanity of the community out of which he comes. And that becomes one of the challenges when we think about the avaricious, exploitative nature of some of the capitalist expressions in hip hop. And we find, again, a contested space throughout. But I did want to end there, so I want to end on a more positive note, right? So, but even in this more positive note, what do these dudes have in their hands, right? Money, right? They have presidents. But this is an interesting thing about empowerment. And here we have the first time in the history of the United States a black president. We have these dudes at the White House. We have these people with shirts off, money in their hands. It looks like an all-male space. You have folks with bottles, and on the bottom you have a judge there who looks like he's certainly conquered, X's across his eyes. He's defeated, and there's a critique clearly about all sorts of things. And this is about, Stuart Hall mentioned, encoding and decoding messages. And there are people here who are better than I in terms of rhetoric and visioning. I know Dr. Scott talked about this. But this image is a very powerful image. But how we read this image, how we understand the image, how we receive the image, a lot of it depends on our own sort of understanding of the world, our own subjective viewpoint to it. But if anyone hasn't gotten the album, I got a chance to run through beautiful Waco today. Did my 8 miles, I felt all good. And I can't say I've given $400,000 to get an applause for that, but my little 8 miles, I felt really good about my 8 miles today. But I got a chance to listen to the new album, so I certainly invite you guys to see that. But that image, again, is a very powerful image about empowerment. Thank you, guys, and I guess we'll have Q&A.
Is what is hip hop to you? And before you speak, for those of you guys who haven't been introduced, we'd like for you guys to give a quick synopsis of who you are and what you do and where you work here at Baylor University.
I'm Sam Perry. I'm in the BIC. I teach rhetoric and American studies.
And I'm Mia Rudy Ramirez, and I work in the journalism, PR, and new media department. And I teach PR programming and research methods and research theory.
I'm Scott Varda. I work here in the Department of Communication. I teach argumentation, debate, African American rhetoric, and pretty much whatever else they need me to teach. Yeah. I don't need applause, but before we move on, actually, can we give a brief round of applause for Dr. Roz Beatty, who, without her help, we would not have.
So to just restate the question, what is hip hop to you? In 1 or 2 words, starting.
No challenge there. To me, hip hop is an aesthetic, and I'll work from there in my other.
To me, it's a cultural movement.
Freedom.
It's a bite off of the question here. I would say cultural movement also.
Something that can't be described in 1 to 2 words?
So our second question was for Perry, what is the history of hip hop and how did it originate?
Well, I had a bunch of stuff written down, as you can see, but MC Light named most of the names that I would name. She lived it. She was part of it. Dr. Agbar explained many of the things that I would have likely explained in terms of the structure of record labels and whatnot. So you'll forgive me a bit if I riff off of my answer that hip hop is an aesthetic. The visual artist Kara Walker was once asked, "How do you make such great art?" or "How do you teach people to make such great art?" And she said, "Oppress them." So hip hop is an aesthetic, I would say, is a response. We saw this video. You had people, giving verse in many different languages and many different sort of cultural milieus. And a lot of those responses had to do with some sort of feeling of oppression, some sort of feeling of not having a voice. So hip hop, I believe, is in one sense an aesthetic of voice, and that is how it is formed, but it's also an aesthetic that travels through many other mediums. Dr. Agbar alluded to the work of Basquiat and the tagging and wild style. You see people finding a new way to create art over and over, and hip-hop is the spirit by which that art is created in many ways. You see people creating films. You have renegade filmmakers in LA. Later you have Spike Lee, who you could argue is a hip-hop filmmaker in some ways.
Yes.
I got verification, I feel good about this. But for me, my studies and my research really goes all the way back to the 1890s and all the way through the 1930s and 1940s in studying the anti-lynching movement. And I talk extensively about Billie Holiday in a couple of places. And I even see Billie Holiday in some senses as a hip-hop artist. You know, the spirit of what she's doing, especially in something like Strange Fruit, where she can take an image of oppression, take an image of white supremacy, and turn that into an image of resistance. And when you can find a way to do that, you've found a means by appropriation to form a mode of resistance. And I think that's very important, and that's vital to hip-hop culture. But the other side of that sword, or the other thing that we have to be very mindful of, we saw all of these pictures in terms of where the appropriation of hip-hop turns into a money-making enterprise. So Dr. Agbar talked about Gramsci and Adorno, and they warned of this, right? What happens when you feed back into the system? So hip-hop, I think, has to remain an aesthetic of newness and an aesthetic of response to remain itself. And I will leave it at that, because there are people who have already done a much better job than I can in the history of hip-hop.
So, as many of our speakers have already alluded to, Rappers Alike was one of the first records to go commercial within hip-hop. And so, with that, I just wanted to hear what your response to capitalism and hip-hop culture, how do you feel about that, Professor Varda?
Okay. I'm going to answer tentatively for lots of reasons, not the least of which is I think that to give an answer to what's the relationship between hip-hop and capitalism probably takes at least 3 or 4 books or a couple of hours. And we should get back to the actual talent as quickly as possible. So I'll instead say that fundamentally I'm of two minds when it comes to the relationship between capitalism and hip-hop. One is the pessimistic, which is that the way that capitalism orders the systems of relations in which we live means that the idea that those people who make something of their art into a global empire are not actually those who we should either look up to or fundamentally construct a positive image around. And the reason for that is that all that image of hip-hop creates really is another way to convince historically otherized people to engage in the capitalist system instead of trying to remake a table differently from the table that those who've done really well for themselves have already gotten a seat for themselves at. So that's sort of the pessimistic view, that people like Beyonce and Jay-Z fundamentally just reify the Horatio Alger myth of an American meritocracy, that if you pick yourself up by the bootstraps enough, then you can have the riches of the capitalist order that are promised to the 1%. The problem with that is that that's not only not possible for the rest of us, but that it convinces us to create a conservatizing, underdeveloped notion of hip-hop that means that the kinds of hip-hop that get celebrated is relatively superficial, and the things that we end up listening to and gets commercialized, it sort of creates a divergence between what Immortal Technique calls the superpowers of the industry and the underground third world of the street. That it means that we end up listening to it really means that Common can get invited to the White House, but he can't actually rap without backlash about remaking the political system of the United States. It means that Diddy can help promote vote or die registration drives, but helping construct an actual revolutionary program for the uplift of the poor and brown and black bodies isn't something that is high on the priority list. It means that Dre used to rap about F the police, and now he sells headphones for $1 billion. Actually progressive artists like Dead Prez and Moral Technique and Talib and Lupe might get press every once in a while, but that's not fundamentally who everyone ends up seeing. I think there's another view. That's clearly the pessimistic view. I think there's a much more optimistic view as well, and that is that hip-hop is fundamentally counter-hegemonic. And while all of those problems with capitalism don't fundamentally begin from Rapper's Delight, right? This isn't something that there is no capitalism prior to 1979. Instead, and hip-hop certainly didn't cause the 1996 Telecommunications Act that made it so that media consolidation made it so that 90% of your media that used to be on 50 companies or so are now constituted by 6 companies, and all of those companies make sure that you hear the same thing over and over again. So all of those criticisms of hip-hop in relationship to capitalism aren't unique to hip-hop. But it also means that the positive power of hip-hop as a counter-hegemonic force is still there, which means that the dissemination of hip-hop to large numbers of people, as you saw in the video you all played for us, in terms of the global reach, are ones that prior to Rapper's Delight being broadcast to large numbers of people, you had to live in one of only a few select cities in order to have any access to hip-hop in the first place. And it means also that those revolutionary artists do have access to a wider audience who can engage in a critique of the power relations that exist not just from capitalism, but from sexism and racism and homophobia that exists throughout the rest of our culture as well. So I don't want to make it seem like I don't have an answer, because the ultimate answer is that it's much more complicated than what is the relationship between the two of them. But I vacillate somewhere between the naively optimistic of hip-hop is a counter-hegemonic force that will make everything better, and the almost jaded, pessimistic vision of hip-hop is a way to simply suck more people into the capitalist machine. Because the last part of the counter-hegemonic part is that there are, in fact, lots of ways that respectability politics and Cosby-era notions of blackness get slayed by modern hip-hop, and that there are economic measures of power that people like MC Lyte and Russell Simmons and Dr. and Mrs. Richardson and Dre it essentially get to control the means of production that previously they did not have access to. That was, in fact, the goal of those Black Power movements that Dr. Agbar was talking about, that weren't ever able to truly control their own means of production in that way. So I am simultaneously pessimistic and optimistic about the relationship between capitalism and hip-hop.
So this next question is in a similar vein to what MC Lyte was talking about when she said, so this is for Dr. Ramirez. And the question is, conscious rap music is back on the rise. Do you believe that the media and major corporations are giving conscious rappers a platform? Why or why not?
Okay, first, I would like to just define what conscious rap is. It is a genre of hip-hop that focuses on creating awareness and imparting knowledge. Conscious rap traditionally focuses on violence, discrimination, and other societal elements such as commercialism and mistreatment of women. To a certain extent, if you are a rapper, you probably automatically somewhat are conscious. What makes a conscious rapper stand out is they steer clear of lyrics that focus on misogyny, materialism, and other negative factors. So that's what would separate a conscious rapper from, say, a mainstream rapper. So-called conscious music is not always created for the masses. Therefore, the mainstream media may not promote it. You will not hear conscious rappers spouting the importance of driving Bentleys or drinking Cristal or living an expensive lifestyle. Conscious music is more about topics that are closer to the artist's heart. When I think of conscious music, I think of the hit TV show Empire and the two brothers Hakeem and Jamal. The middle son, Jamal, raps and sings about topics that are close to his heart and that matter to him. He is not worried about making money, but yet his younger brother, Hakeem, he raps about some of the more traditional topics. Their styles are very different, and which brother is the most popular? Okay, and so that tells you what style of music is the most popular. So conscious music is traditionally not as popular as mainstream rap music. And that is the reality of conscious music. It is usually mellow and relaxing. So you may not hear it on a mainstream radio station, unless it's someone like Macklemore. You guys are all familiar with the song Same Love. That has been labeled a so-called conscious record because of the topic. And you guys are familiar with that. Other breakout artists are Common, Nas, and Kendrick Lamar. Kanye West has even been labeled a conscious artist. Yes. Even with all his scandals, he is. Capitalism to his lyrics. Other conscious rappers are The Roots, Mos Def, Immortal, Technique, Lupe Fiasco, Killer Mike, and Lauryn Hill. These artists' songs contain positive, uplifting messages. So we have to be careful when we label rappers as all negative. As a sign of success of conscious artists, they often win music awards. For example, Common has won and been nominated for numerous awards in Grammys, on BET, VH1, and VMA awards. Most recently, he won the 2015 Academy Award for Best Original Song for his song Glory for the 2015 film Selma. Kendrick Lamar has a long list of accolades as well. Most recently, he won the Best Rap Song and Performance at the 2015 Grammy Awards. So we cannot say that these artists are not successful. Nas has 6 #1 albums on the Billboard 200, which makes him tied with Eminem and Kanye West for the second all-time among rappers. The fact that these artists are winning awards and getting some airtime demonstrates that conscious music is somewhat popular. However, it is not nearly as popular as the other songs that we hear 80 to 90% of the time on rap radio stations. The reason for this is conscious music tends to be a little more mellow and it does not promote commercialism. So back to my original question. Do you believe that the media and major corporations are giving conscious rappers a platform? Bottom line is, conscious music is not as popular as mainstream rap because there is not a lot of product placement in conscious music. So corporations and media outlets are going to be less likely to give it the airtime. And in addition, people like to hear about some of these topics. We have to be realistic. People are okay with hearing about women shaking their booties and all these other, people are okay with that and they like the beats. So they are okay with that type of music. So think about it. The media and corporations are concerned about the bottom line, so they're going to give people what they want to hear. So there's more money to be made in songs that tout Cristal and Bentleys than songs that tout love and happiness. So the powers that be are going to provide people with what they want. So to conclude, my answer is both yes and no. The media and major corporations are giving conscious rappers a platform to a certain extent, but not as much as they should.
Alright, so now that we've kind of already heard from everybody on the panel, we know what they kind of feel about the topic, and so now it's time to hear from you guys. We'll give 1 to 2 minutes or so for you guys to just kind of think about some questions, and then we'll go to the Q&A portion of the event.
I have a question for MC Light. Kanye West has been known as a conscious rapper, but the comments he's made in the past few weeks before he said racism is a dated concept, especially since he's been marrying, he's been, getting more money and been marrying, his wife Kim Kardashian. Do you think that because especially with capitalism, that money will change a rapper if they get enough money? Since Kanye West has been talking about the white man, you'll end up with a white, they end up taking your girl, in Gold Digger he said that you can ask for a white girl, sorry. So, especially as Kanye West is a conscious rapper, what do you think that, capitalism has affected him?
Well, I always hear that money just makes you more of who you are or who you want to be. However, I think we just need to look at all of the dynamics. Although her skin is white, she's Armenian, so it is different. However, I think whatever makes that man happy after what he's gone through, I'm exceptionally close with my mom. So to think about losing her and then also being thwarted into a world of everyone telling you no, because even though he's very popular, he's still told no. And that's not easy for him to take. We've seen his fits. But I love Kanye because he speaks his mind. And if love is what he is experiencing, then why not let him just experience it? And that's how I feel.
This is for everybody on the panel. Jay-Z said in his lyrics, as I quote, "If you grew up with holes in your zapatos, you would celebrate the minute you was having dough." So he was saying that why not rappers brag about where they came from or where they're at now, given where they came from? So is it how it's delivered or the message that makes rapping about money, cars, and clothes so wrong?
I missed the last sentence. Is it about?
I said, so is it how it's delivered or the message that makes rapping about money, cars, and clothes so wrong?
You know what? I don't even know, and I'll just jump in. You guys can follow. I don't know that it's wrong per se because I've talked about cars, I've talked about money, and all of those things. But I think what happens is the balance is missing. To paint a picture for the youth that's all that happens. Like if we were to look at videos of today, it's like a nonstop party and nothing else is happening. And I think what I'm counting on is that as an MC, you're a newscaster, so to speak. So your job is to tell the story of what's really happening and what's really going on around you. And unfortunately, I think it's been said quite a bit on this panel, the corporations don't really care about that. They care about giving entertainment, and nowhere in it does it say they want to entertain and educate and uplift and make a mighty people. I think the more they're able to dumb down a situation and teach as minimum as possible is exactly what will happen if we allow it to keep going that way. I think the more we uplift, I know there's people in here who know of MCs that are conscious, that are spreading a word of truth that the rest of us in this room may not know of. So I think it's important that we talk about those and we spread the word of those conscious rappers, because really that's how they get lifted up, and that's how they become popular. And so we need to take back the control in who sits at our helm. You know, they, on the cover of any magazine, they can say this person is the top of hip hop, but that doesn't make it true. We need to be more participatory in who it is that we want to see in the forefront.
Thank you.
Who are your top 3 favorite rappers of all time? Anyone on the panel? That's an open question.
Everybody on the panel. 3? Top 5.
Arbitrary numbers and arbitrary numbers.
Start on this.
Are we starting over here?
MC Light, MC Light, MC Light.
Dr. Obar?
Yeah, in addition to that, I would, you know, it's tough to say. I mean, I get the question all the time, and I you know, so, you know, you think of love right now, listening to Kendrick Lamar, and I like J. Cole a lot, and I'm a big fan of folks from back in the day as well. And Pharoah Monch is the name that I often mention, and Pharoah Monch, there was something just came out last night, at least I saw it for the first time. It hasn't come yet. Pharoah Monch actually posted on Facebook the most underrated MCs. You know, if you saw that list, top 5 on underrated MCs, and he was actually number 1 on that list that some magazine put out. And there are a lot of folks that I like a lot, and sometimes my tastes change. I think, you know, sometimes the mood, you know, I'm like, you know, feeling a certain way, and all of a sudden Ice Cube becomes my favorite MC of all time. So I think a lot of this, there's so many really good MCs out there that over the course of my, you know, 35 years listening to hip hop that I've sucked up, you know. So anyway, yes, but those are some of them.
I guess, I mean, I like MCs for different reasons, but I think those who have been the most impactful in my life, KRS-One, by far being the edutainer and being willing to use his voice in the way that he does. Rakim, just for his flow and style and South off air, you know. And then, you know, for flow, I mean, I cannot acknowledge Jay-Z. He is one of the best to ever have done it. And his ability to keep up with the times and sound as current as what's happening now. Now, what is that, 3, huh?
Yeah.
2 more. Tupac. Get out of my head. That's it. Tupac. What an extraordinary spirit. Now there are, one of you just said it, there are, he said, how do we know if they're conscious? It's something that you feel, it's something that you're connected to. It's something that allows you to have a great affinity for the artist and not just the song, you know? I think today we live in a society where the song is what you're a fan of, and you can really care less about the MC who's, or the rapper rather, that's rapping it. Where when you feel like somebody puts their heart and soul into what it is that they're doing, and it's not just for the money, you can feel it. And that was Tupac. And the number 5 position, I'm just gonna leave open because there are quite a few that I like. Their songs, not their entire body of work per se. So I'll leave that one open.
Okay, and I'm going to go with Kanye West. With all the scandals. You know, if you listen to his lyrics, listen to some of his earlier music, he has a lot of really good content. And I also like Drake. I My husband is a DJ, so I have to keep up the music. And I like Kendrick Lamar. And then going back, I like Roxanne Shante. Roxanne. I don't know if y'all remember that. And then Salt and Pepper.
Going last might have been worse than going first. I really love the stuff I listen to most frequently. Probably is the Roots, and I mean their body of work is so interesting in terms of the way that they progressed as musicians and as a group. I still pull out Jurassic 5 Quality Control fairly frequently, and then I got a couple of students in here. I love Lupe Fiasco for. It's not always easy to maybe listen to his albums or watch the videos, but you want to talk about being able to have teaching moments and bring something into class. I really enjoy his stuff.
A lot of artists come in with the idea that we have to stay genuine to who we are, and there's like a homogenous thing of saying keeping it 100, authenticity and normality is a key thing. But when you become mainstream, you become a rapper, so to speak, or an artist in general, you kind of lose that authenticity. You, like your fans say that you lost, you're not 100 anymore. You aren't genuine. How do you clear the airways for that ambiguity? How do you stay true to who you are as an artist rather than staying, you know what I'm saying, just being different, you know? What's it like?
I think it's really about the foundation of why you even started. What are you doing it for? What are you in it for? And then, trust me, along the way, I've been asked to do numerous things that just do not fit in line with who I am as a person, not even as a rapper, not even as an MC. So if I deal with those things first, in terms of where my ethics lie, that certainly helps. I think for this younger generation, there's so much more. There's not the amount of guidance in play that was during my generation of hip hop, so to speak. Like you had people like Will Smith, whose grandmother said don't curse, and he said okay, I won't. And then you had Heavy D, whose parents said don't curse. He said okay, I won't. Like there's not even anyone asking them not to curse. Not that cursing is bad, because you want a form of expression that feels genuine to who you are. But those are just a few examples as to how an older generation can influence a younger generation. But I don't think we're saying enough, or once they've reached a certain level of success, they don't really want to hear you. So what you have to say hasn't really helped them get to the status that they're at now, so they feel like everything is A-okay. But in all honesty, people go through phases. Was I the best person always? I'm sure if you ask somebody when I was 19, maybe not. But I do pride myself on treating people fairly, and that's who I am as a person. So if you have an artist now who never was nice anyway, and now they're on top and they're making all of this, I don't see all of a sudden that they're gonna become nice. However, I think your question feels like it directly ties to someone like Kanye. And so I think he just goes through he's going through life, he's going through a journey. And because he's so open with who he is, we're able to see everything. He's not hidden behind anything. He's really very forthcoming with what he feels, and he'll say, fuck you, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Okay, he's really upfront with everything. So I just feel like for him and many others,
We just have to hope that they get the opportunity to come around, and if we're ever in their presence and we can say a word of some sort to help them to open their consciousness to another way of thinking, because they probably have a bunch of people around them that is not saying the things that need to be said, to help them keep grounded with reality and keeping it real. But thank you for that question.
I don't know if this is so much a question, but a question and an answer. And I would say probably really a flat out disagreement with something and some things that have been said here tonight. And Light and I, although we are business partners and friends and sisters, we disagree on some topics, and this is one of them. I run the Hip Hop Summit Action Network with Dr. Benjamin Chavis. And the Hip Hop Summit Action Network was started back in 2001 by Russell Simmons and Dr. Chavis. At that time, there was a big beef going on between the East Coast rappers and the West Coast rappers, and people were killing folks and shooting and all that stuff. And they decided to get all of the rappers, not just the hip hop artists, but the record industry, the RIAA, and all these people together to really kind of call a cease and desist. People advised them not to do it, they did it. They decided to create this organization, which is now named the Hip Hop Summit Action Network. The whole mission is taking back responsibility. The Hip Hop Summit Action Network was responsible for the single largest youth voter registration drive in American history. The Hip Hop Summit Action Network also worked the Get Your Money Right initiative, which went global. That was my entry into the Hip Hop Summit Action Network. So just wanted to say that from a historical perspective about why these two men came together. But here's what they both believe, Dr. Benjamin Chavis and Russell Simmons, and I'm going to add myself to that. Dr. Benjamin Chavis says every rapper is conscious. It's just what are they conscious about? How do we get to pick and choose and decide what conscious is? We're all, I did my undergrad at Northwestern. We're smart people here. Look up the definition of conscious. It means awake. It means aware. So what are you aware about? What are you talking about? And one of the things that Russell Simmons says is if a rapper is rapping about, excuse my French, bitches and hoes and money and this, that, and the other, who are we to say that that is not their reality? First thing that we have to understand is this. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and I saw young people, for the first time ever, I saw people on crack cocaine. I saw people strung out on drugs in a way that, from my understanding, had never happened in this world before. Well, guess what? Now, today, at the age of 43, I'm looking at the first generation of people who grew up with parents on crack, right? Okay? So you take somebody like Lil Wayne, and if you've ever seen his story, he was 11 years old, he was in the house, his mama was wherever she was, strung out on crack or whatever, he accidentally shot himself. What else do we expect him to rap about, except his experience? And so what Russell says is, if we are really, really having a conversation about conscious rap and who's rapping what's good and what's bad, now, yes, I have my opinion about what is inspiring. Yes, I have my opinion about what is empowering. Yes, I have my opinion about what brings light and life and love and long-lasting, the ability to empower others and pass down a legacy to another generation. But conscious is simply being aware of what it is that you are experiencing in this world. And guess what? There are rappers who party all day. My brother and his friends, they're in their mid-30s. Well, he just got a job, but I ain't gonna talk about that. But him and his friends, all they do is party and girls and this and that. And so if they were rappers, I don't expect them to be talking about glory. I'm sorry. That's just not gonna happen. So Russell always says that we want to have a conversation, and the conversation needs to be about changing the circumstances that these people are, I was born and raised in the projects. My grandmother was 75 years old, cleaning homes for wealthy white people to put me through one of the greatest colleges on the planet. And I chose a path, but everybody didn't necessarily choose that same path or even have the consciousness to choose it. And so I just kind of disagree with what some of us have called what conscious rap is. Now, you can call it spiritual, you can call it empowering, you can call it inspiring, but conscious is simply awareness. Now, let me just say this about money, because, again, this is something else I disagree with. Now, let's just be clear. I went to seminary, I am a certified chaplain, I love the Lord, I believe in all kind of good things, but the bottom line at the end of the day, ain't nothing wrong with money. Ain't nothing wrong with talking about money. Ain't nothing wrong with rapping about money. Try to come to this school and go to classes without some. All right? Every professor who's up there, at the end of the day, week, month, on the 1st, the 15th, the 30th, you looking for your money. So at the end of the day, I ain't working for you, you understand? It is ministry. If you're feeding the homeless, if you're taking money to the people in Haiti or whatever, honey, you need some money to get there. So really the conversation needs to be about how to monetize it in a good way. Because the truth is, your generation is the first generation, really kind of my generation too, but the baby boomers were the last ones to go to school, get a good education, get a good job, and then retire into the sunset and work somewhere for 40 years. Companies aren't even staying around for 40 years. If they are staying around for 40 years, they don't want you for 40 years because you are a liability, not an asset. If they can replace you with a machine, they will. So at the end of the day, how do you create a hustle? The hustle is no longer getting a job for 30 or 40 years. So I just think that we need to be a little more sensitive about what's really happening. I think we need to be a little more broad about the conversation about money, because at the end of the day, Zig Ziglar said it best. Money ain't everything, but it's like oxygen. You gotta have it.
And my question was, MC Light, I know I've watched numerous documentaries, interviews, videos, award show speeches, things like that. So my question pretty much is, when you were coming up, starting, and you were, doing your thing and on the rise, how did you stay grounded? And also, how did you stay motivated when sometimes you look back and everybody's not doing the same thing you're doing, and you're trying to see, how do I benchmark myself when there is no other benchmarks to look at?
Thank you for that question. I think because in the very beginning, I just wanted to inspire people. I was inspired by my mom and by other people in the community, as well as her being able to expose me to different things, theater and museums, and so I just was definitely inspired to be more and to be greater than I was. And so for me, hip hop was just a means to be able to inspire other people. And because to inspire was like the moniker, everything else sort of fell under that. So it's by any means necessary, really. So if it's not MCing, it's writing. If it's not hip hop, it's poetry. If it means I get up and do voiceover or act or any of that, which completely have to prepare for in order to do. And I think sometimes my peers feel as though they kind of get locked into this is what I do and this is who I am, and I never took that on. And as far as staying grounded, just having people around me that will tell me, hey, hey, that's not the right thing, or hey, this could be better, or just a supportive team of people around, which oftentimes does not happen in this business. Unfortunately, you can be surrounded with people who are afraid to say anything, or what they're saying isn't the right thing. And a lot of it has to do with them caring more about themselves and their position within the circumference than it is about you personally. And take all of that and throw it out the window. God, it's through the grace of God that I'm here. He knows my heart. He knows my true intention, and he gives me opportunity after opportunity to let him work through me.